Hi, everyone. I know it said live in 2 minutes. I can't wait 2 minutes to bring Bob Burg into the show. Okay. This is going to be a game-changing show, you guys, especially for the lawyers and other professionals out there who are trying to connect, build rapport, and close deals and make sales on live video or on the digital platforms. My name's Mitch Jackson. This is Wednesday night, legalmarketing.live. My guest tonight is the amazing Bob Burg, and let me give Bob a proper introduction. Bob is the co-author of The Go-Giver, a Wall Street Journal and Business Week bestseller, which has sold over 950,000 copies. That's amazing, Bob. Since its release, it has consistently stayed in the top 25 on Porchlight, which is formerly 800 CEO Read Business Book Bestsellers list. The book has been translated into 28 languages, and it's rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written, and was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence. And by the way, he knows that Adversaries into Allies is one of my favorite books that Bob has written, which teaches people skills. I will not even mentor a young trial lawyer until they've read and understood Adversaries into Allies. So I wanted to share that with all of you. For more than 30 years, Bob's helped companies, sales leaders, and their teams to more effectively communicate their value, sell at higher prices with less resistance, and grow their businesses based on endless referrals. He regularly addresses audiences ranging in size from 50 to 16,000. Yes, that's 16,000, sharing the platform with notables, including today's top thought leaders, broadcast personalities, Olympic athletes, and political leaders, including a former United States president. Today, Bob's here with you and me, and he is all ours. Let me bring Bob Burg into the show. Bob, how you doing?
Brother Mitch, what a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it because there are very few people on this planet who I look to and respect and value what they have to say as much as you. And so it means the world to me and guests joining us tonight that you're here tonight, Bob. I appreciate that. And we're going to talk about the 5 principles of ultimate or genuine influence and how lawyers and other professionals can tap into these 5 principles to build rapport, connect with their audience, close that sale. In my world is to make relationships. And so, Bob, I'm really glad you're on tonight. Before I hand the mic over to you, though, I would like everyone, please share this out, you guys. Please ask your questions. They will be coming into the comments. Those of you on Twitter, Periscope, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching the show, we're here for you, and we want this to be something that is going to add massive value to you and your careers. Bob, the 5, why don't we start with, where did you come up with the 5 principles of genuine influence? I've never heard the story behind that.
Well, I think it begins in a sense with the importance of influence in a way. And if we're going to look at influence, if we're going to define influence, Mitch, on a very, very basic level, we can define influence as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That, by definition, is influence. It's the definition, but it's not its essence. It's not its substance. Okay, the essence of influence is pull as opposed to push, as in how far can you push a rope? And we all know the answer is not very far. Well, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers, ultimate influencers, genuine influencers, don't push, right? They don't push their will on others. They don't push their ideas on others. They're not push-y. You never hear someone say, wow, that David or that Susan, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she has a lot of pull with people. Because
I love that.
influence is. It's an attraction. Great influencers attract people first to their idea, first to themselves, excuse me, then to their ideas, and they do that again through pull. So now the question needs to be, well, how does that pull show itself? How does that pull manifest itself? And I believe that every great influencer really understands and embraces at a heart level, not even just a head level, but a heart level, what I believe was Dale Carnegie's underlying principle in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this is where Mr. Carnegie said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the ultimate or genuine influencer, what they do is they ask themselves questions to make sure their focus is in the right place, right? So they'll ask themselves, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their wants, with their needs, with their desires? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it align with their values? How am I helping to solve their problems? How am I helping to make their life better? And when we ask ourselves these questions, Mitch, thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another person according to our will, right? No, but as a way of building everyone in the process. When we do that, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, as opposed to trying to depend on some kind of compliance, which is either force or manipulation or coercion. And I love what one of my great friends, Dondi Scumaci, she's a fantastic author and speaker and practitioner of leadership and team building. She says, compliance will never take you where commitment can go.
Ooh, I like that.
I think that's where, when we understand influence in that regard, and we realize that great influence is never about the influencer, right? Great influence is about the other person. It's why in law number 3 of John David Mann's, in my book, The Go-Giver, the law of influence said, your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. No, not in a way that you're a doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial. Absolutely not. It's simply understanding, as Joe, the protege, learned from several of the mentors in the story, the golden rule of business, of sales, of leadership, of it, what have you, is that all things being equal, people will do business with, they'll refer business to, and they'll allow themselves to be influenced by those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you in others than by, again, genuinely moving from an I focus or me focus to an other focus. And Mitch, this is what you teach so well in everything you do. In your book, that that I was honored to participate in, and along with David Meerman Scott, and I won't even mention names because then I have to leave people out. But so many of my heroes that you had in that book, that was basically the theme throughout. It's how do you focus on that other person, whether it's that one person you're responding to, or a group you're tweeting some advice to, or answering a question. How do you ask? You ask yourself that question: is what I'm about to say, do, tweet, post, pin, whatever, is it about to add value to the other person?
So let me ask you a question, because we have a lot of lawyers watching live and the recorded version of tonight's show. And in everything we do, Bob, there's always a lot of emotion involved in this process. What you just said makes sense. What you just said, I could write down and check off if I had my time during a conversation to make sure I'm following these principles. Right? But here's the thing. Emotions come into play, not only with us, but with our clients. Sometimes there are life-changing circumstances that we're being asked to help fix. Can you share some tips, some thoughts, some approaches to channeling our emotions and dealing with the emotional side of what you just shared?
Mitch, the sages had a saying in the form of a question and an answer, and it went, who is a mighty person? And their answer was, that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy or of a potential enemy a friend. And this is where it all begins, because it's only when we're in control of our own emotions that we're even in a position to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. I think we all know that. How much do we respect that person who just really keeps their head and really stays logical and rational and reasonable when everyone else has kind of got right? And yet,
Right.
how often do we, based on what another human being says or does or posts or what have you, do we allow ourselves to feel either hurt or victimized or angry or whatever? And we say or we do or we post or we tweet or what have you, something that not only is not productive, it's absolutely counterproductive when it comes to achieving the goal we want to achieve. Well, why do we do this if we know better? Because we're human beings. And as human beings, we are emotional creatures. That's how we were built. Now, we'd like to think we're logical, right? And to a certain extent, of course, we are. But we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion. Attorneys such as yourself, you see that every day in the juries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who are deciding emotionally, even though the facts have been presented. Okay, which is why so often when they feel like they know, like, and trust the attorney, they go with that person. That's emotion. It's not right. But so we do this even though we know better, because we're human beings and we do that. But here's the thing: we're not saying to deny your emotions or forego your emotions. Well, first, it wouldn't make logical sense, because it's part of human nature. We couldn't do it for too long. But there's also no reason to. Emotions are a wonderful part of humanity. It brings us joy. It makes life worthwhile, right?
Right.
You need to master your emotions as opposed to your emotions being the master of you. That's the key. Or, as again, going back to Dondi Scumaci, as she so eloquently says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
I love that quote. I love that. That is so powerful. So,
Brilliant.
as I've gotten older, Bob, and I think I can speak for some friends of mine because I've talked to them about this, I'm in more control of my emotions. I have a pretty good grip on what's going on, and it comes from life experiences and the things we've seen in the courtroom. But a new client, it's not always the same. I'm dealing with somebody that's very emotional. We're dealing with clients, like I said, there's just game-changing things that they have to deal with and they've never dealt with before. Are there some tools that I can use or our audience can use to have a conversation with a client or to ask a client so that we can help them check their emotions or channel their emotions into a positive pathway as opposed to a negative, detrimental path?
So let's look at this. Let's look at first how we can do it ourselves, and then how we can teach our client to do the same thing. Okay. There are times that we know that someone typically says or does something that pushes our buttons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it's going to happen because it happens all the time. And even though we know better, it still pushes our buttons and we still get angry right? So what I want you to do is imagine this situation that is bound to happen. It's going to be either that or with someone else, but these things are a pattern. It tends to be the same things bother us all the time in the same situations. I want you to now make believe, just in your mind, make believe this very thing is happening, and that you react, which is negative. Responding is positive. Reacting is that you react in the same way you usually do. You lose control, you start arguing, or you feel horrible. But okay, that's fine. But now I want you to picture this again. I want you to picture this person saying or doing what they say or do, only now I want you to just imagine yourself just handling it beautifully. You respond perfectly. have total, serenity. You're totally feeling great. You let this person speak without interrupting them. You say the exact right thing that diffuses the situation. Don't worry about the exact words yet. Those come later. I want you to just feel that and see it happening. Okay. The big thing is how you respond to it. And I want you to do this in your mind a number of times. Now, it's very similar to an astronaut who, before they go up into space, they do hundreds and hundreds of simulations first. Why? So that when they do go up in space and that thing happens, which is probably bound to happen, they've been through it. They know they say to themselves, oh, I know this. I've done this hundreds of times. Now, a simulation isn't the exact same as being up in space, and going through this in your mind isn't the same as it, but it's pretty close. We know that the subconscious, the unconscious cannot distinguish between what is real and what has been suggested to it, especially again and again with feeling put into it. So now, okay, the next time you come across this person or this situation, what's going to happen is when they say or do what they say or do, immediately it's boom. Oh, I know this. In that little nanosecond, you have it's like, oh yeah, of course, there's nothing. And you handle it beautifully. And it just works. And then you feel great about yourself. Now, here's the thing, Mitch. There are two things real quickly. One, if you do it correctly once, you know you can do it correctly like that every time. Secondly, you won't do it correctly every time. Why? Because you're human and I'm human and we're going to mess up sometimes. But you know something, though? We mess up less and less as we do this more and more. And
like anything else, right?
Anything else. So now you've got a client who you're prepping. I watch Law and Order, so I know the term prepping. Okay?
You got it down. You got it down.
I got it down.
Right.
You must hate when people do that, right? They watch like
no. I know we're good.
I know, right? So you're prepping this client, and you let them know something's going to happen. That after your examination, the opposing counsel is going to cross-examine them. And here's what they're going to say to you. Boom. And they're going to say this and that and so forth. And here's what's going to happen. Your natural human reaction is to buy into that and get angry and start, but that's not what you want to do. Not if you win this case. What you want to do now, take them through the exercise that we just went through and have them go through it and go through it a few times with them and have them go through it a few times. And here, then you say this, okay? So tomorrow, or whenever it is that you're doing it, depending on when you actually do prep a person. On TV, it's the night before. It's probably longer before then.
It's the night before that 20-minute long case.
Right, exactly.
Something happens and then they're in trial that same day. I get that, yeah.
Seconds,
not 3 to 5 years later.
and so you let them know, okay, and you say, when this happens, and so accuses you of what have you, what you're going to do is you're going to remember this conversation.
I love that.
You're going to remember the rehearsals that you did in your mind and how beautifully, and you're going to actually have a little conversation with yourself, and you're going to say, oh yeah, Mitch and I went through this.
I love that. And when you're having a conversation with yourself, guess what? Words aren't coming out of your mouth. And what I found sometimes with emotional clients, and we're going to talk about this next, the second step of the 5 principles of ultimate or genuine influence, I found by listening and not saying anything and letting clients to share their story, oftentimes that allows them to settle down, take a deep breath, get it out of their system, and then we can move forward with the approaches that you just shared. And I just absolutely love that. But I think a lot of that has to do with, number 2, understanding the clash of belief systems between your client and you, a judge and a jury, a prosecutor and a witness, an expert witness, and who they have to talk to when they go home at night, right? There's a lot involved here, Bob.
There is. And with every single person you mentioned, it's exactly true, because every single person comes at life from their own set of beliefs. What is a belief, Mitch? A belief is a subjective truth. In other words, it's the truth as you or as I understand the truth to be.
I love that.
Which means it may be the truth or it may not be the truth. Okay? It's simply how we subjectively see it. Well, our belief system is a combination of everything from upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, everything we touch, taste, hear, see, smell, every experience. But really, by the time we're little more than toddlers, our belief system, the way we see the world, the truth, the subjective truth, the way we see the world is pretty much etched in stone. Everything that comes after that pretty much just gets added on to that basic premise. Now, here's the thing. So for most of us, throughout our entire life, we live our entire lives controlled by what I call an unconscious operating system. Okay, we don't even know we're seeing things through the prism or prism sometimes of our personal beliefs, our subjective truths. Now, not only is that true with us, it's true with that other person. It's true of the juror, of the judge, of the opposing attorney, everything, everyone we're involved with. But here's the thing. As human beings, we think that the way we see the world is pretty much the way everyone else sees the world. That's very intuitive. How could it be anything else? It's all we know. It's our subjective truth. Okay, because of there's only one way we can ever truly understand someone, and that is just what you were talking about. Ask questions and then listen. Ask questions and then listen. Don't listen to make your point. Don't listen to sharp angle them into where you want to go. Don't listen to judge. Just listen to absolutely, totally understand where they're coming from. And you made one great point I just want to mention before, and I apologize. But when you said that they will often feel better, your client, when you go through that, it's because they just want to know they're understood. They want to feel understood. It is just an absolute part of human nature, the desire to feel understood by another human being.
I'll tell you, and when we listen to what Bob's talking about, you guys, once again, my guest tonight is Bob Burg, co-author of The Go-Giver and Adversaries into Allies. And the principles that Bob's talking about in Adversaries into Allies, I learned for the first time when I read his book. And it was one of the most powerful books, Bob, that I've ever read because of the things that you're discussing. You reminded me to listen. You reminded me to pay attention to the emotions in the verbal transaction that's taking place in my office or in the courtroom. And that's what it is. There's a final sale that's being sought. Mm-hmm. And it's, and it's going to be dependent upon that interaction. It was an eye-opener for me. And that's why I'm such a big fan of you in the book, because it's something that I wish was mandatory reading in law school, or for those of you that are mediators or arbitrators, for those of you that are going to become judges. This is the type of book that allows you to sit as a judge and listen and watch and observe what's happening in your courtroom and have a better understanding that there's more than just one lens. There are multiple lenses. And if you're going to help the parties find justice, appreciating what's happening through all of these lenses, using these 5 principles, I think will take you and our legal system a long, long ways to coming to the right decisions. So, yeah, understanding the clash of belief systems, Bob, is such an important concept. The more we work at it, the better we get. But for a lot of us who have big egos, for a lot of us are representing clients with big egos or appearing in court in front of a judge with a big ego. Yes, it happens every once in a while, and that's fine. We're all human. We've got to deal with that also. But there's a right and wrong way to understand, appreciate, and deal with egos.
Yeah, it's really understanding that the ego, just as emotion is such a driver. Okay, ego and emotion are very related, because when that person's ego is offended, their emotions are just going to run haywire, and they're going to make choice. It's like this: if you've ever heard someone say to someone, that's my final offer. Take it or leave it. Okay. Take it or leave it is a direct attack on another person's ego, to the point that they will often leave it, even if it's in their best interest to take it. Okay. People want to be made to feel good about themselves. When people, we talked about the definition of influence earlier. But if someone says, what's your definition of ultimate influence or your definition of genuine influence? I'd say it's the ability to get the results you want when dealing with others in such a way that they feel genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you. Because Mitch, I'll just say, and you know this, 90% of moving a person to your side of an issue is helping them to feel good about it and helping them to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
So we need to acknowledge their ego. Now, we've got to be aware of ours too. It's not that we don't have one. So we need to understand our ego is also a driver in us. But let's remember, if we're studying this topic, we are hopefully aware of it in ourselves. And it's only, of course, when we're aware of it that we're in a position to be able to do something about it, to grow with it. The other person probably doesn't study this kind of material. So they don't even realize that their ego is getting out of control. See, we can sometimes catch ourselves, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm acting this way. I'm doing this. I just said this. Maybe that was a little bit of Burg's ego talking, not really Burg's logic. Okay, maybe that was the ego, and we can catch ourselves and we can course correct and we can adjust. I can almost guarantee you that's not happening with the other person.
Yeah.
So we are actually responsible for managing their ego.
And I think once you're aware of these principles and you assume responsibility for making sure everybody, whether they realize it or not, are playing by these 5 principles, these 5 rules, you can take opposing counsel and take them by the hand, not literally, but take them outside in the hallway and change the surroundings and change the context of what's being discussed, understanding that you're dealing with an ego situation, and you can approach it from a different perspective. You can be hard on issues and kind to people. And I don't remember where I've read that, but that's not my line. Maybe it's yours, Bob. But the point is by paying attention to these factors, you can plug into and use ego as a tool to move people towards a final resolution.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, and to do that, you want to understand principle number 4 of the ultimate, the 5 principles of genuine or ultimate influence. And that's setting the proper frame, which, by the way, I've talked to some of the young trial lawyers I was sharing with you, I think before we went live, or maybe in an earlier conversation, and they didn't really understand what I meant by setting the proper frame. And I get that. We're not talking about artwork. We're talking about something else, right? But if you do it the right way, it can be art.
Absolutely.
Right. And so what is setting the proper frame, and what are some things that we can do to accomplish that?
And when you set the proper frame, you are basically 80 to 90% of the way to accomplishing your goal. That's how important setting the proper frame is. So what is a frame? Well, a frame can be defined as the foundation from which everything else evolves, from which everything else takes place. That's why it's so important. Let me illustrate this, if I may, with a non-lawyer story.
Sure.
Okay. I was in a Dunkin' Donuts. I know you don't have many of those out in California where you are, but
we have a few.
Okay, you have a few. You do have a few out there.
Yeah.
So I'm in the Dunkin' Donuts restaurant, and there's a little boy, a little toddler, 2.5, 3 years old, and he's running around the restaurant. So his parents call him over to the table. He starts to walk over to them, when suddenly he takes a spill on the floor. He slips, he falls. Now he didn't hurt himself. You could tell, but he was shocked. He was surprised. This was not in his realm of experience in his young life. So he didn't really know what to make of it. First thing he does, he looks over at his mom and dad, the 2 people he trusts most in his life, to get their interpretation of the event. See, what happened. He wanted to know, okay, mom and dad, what happens next? What am I supposed to make of this? I truly believe that had the parents gotten upset and panicky and, oh no, my poor baby, you couldn't blame him, but if they did, he would have started to cry. But
Mhm.
they handled it. The parents handled it so beautifully. They walked over hurriedly, of course, but with an air of real calmness and an aura of joy. They were not upset. They were fine. They smiled at him, and they laughed and they applauded and they said, "Oh, how fun! What a good trick that was!" And immediately the little boy began to laugh. What the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. So now they weren't having to talk him out of being upset. Okay, that's the remedial part. That's the tough part. No, they got it before he started crying. They set the frame, and that's so important. And of course, as an attorney, there are many ways you can set the frame. The key, though, is being able to reset when someone comes in with a already negatively set frame. And that might be that attorney, that other attorney who is more adversarial by nature. And if you buy in and they come in telling you exactly what they expect and what's going to happen, and if you buy into that frame, what happens? It's push versus push here in an argument. So what we need to do is, again, remain calm. We need to kind of understand their belief system. We can kind of, know where they're coming from. That's how they see the world of law, and that's how they write. We understand it's their ego at work. And if we were to say to this person, "Hey, knock it up," that's so. Instead, we're going to reset the frame, and however we would do that, whether it's with a calm demeanor, letting this person know, I've heard great things about you, and I know you're an excellent attorney. What I'd love to see if we can do is work on this so that both of our clients can come out of this in the best, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what.
Bob, that's gold right there. Everybody write down what Bob just said. I'm telling you, if you say that to another lawyer and you've created a relationship where you actually mean it, okay, just because they're on the other side of the counsel table doesn't mean they're your enemy. That will go so far. I love that, Bob. That's such a powerful piece of advice.
Mitch, I remember that, and I had this in the book, Sadaharu Oh, who was the all-time leading Japanese professional baseball league, and leader in home runs. In fact, not just in the Japanese professional baseball league, but all time, anywhere.
Wow.
I'm trying to think now. I think it was like 858 home runs or something like that. I mean, whatever it was right around that mark. Although I might be off.
Wow.
And what he said, and talk about a frame, okay, a proper frame. What he said was, "I never saw the opposing pitcher as my adversary, but rather as my partner in hitting home runs."
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
exactly. Now,
So
here's
opposing counsel is my partner in getting that big verdict from my client.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Without him or her, it wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. Now,
Ooh.
you might say, "Well, wait a second, Burg. I'm sure the pitcher didn't see himself as Sadaharu's partner in Sadaharu in it." No, but that's the neat thing about it. It's only you that has to see it that way at first. You're the person who needs to frame it that way. See, your opposing counsel doesn't need to see him as your partner in winning the case for your client. You just need to see him or her as the partner in the case.
So imagine having that conversation with a stressed out client during your initial consultation, the first time that you've talked about the case, and you approach opposing counsel who maybe has been sending letters, maybe been making phone calls, maybe it's a collection case, and you set the frame where they're going to be someone that's indispensable, our partner in helping me get the results that you need, because without this person, we wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love that. But, setting the frame to live video, let me just pivot big time real quick, because what I'm seeing is a lot of lawyers right now are using live video for new client consultations, for group settlement conferences, for depositions and mediations. And a lot of lawyers, live video is new to them. Mistakes are made, right? The webcam falls off. There's no audio. And I've noticed that the lawyers that know how to set the proper frame on a live video and just keep it moving forward and not focusing on something that doesn't go right, but focusing on keeping that conversation, everyone kind of buys into it.
Absolutely.
If you buy into the lawyer in the Zoom that's complaining and nothing's working and they're saying all the wrong things, and that's the direction your Zoom's going to go.
The frame sets it all. The frame is the context for the content. Okay. I mean, that is really why the frame is so important.
Well, but then again, you got to learn how to do everything you're sharing with us using tact and empathy. And that can be a challenging thing to do, especially when there's emotions and when people are looking at things through different lenses. But it's very important, isn't it?
It's vital.
Yeah.
My dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. And I've always enjoyed that because it does take strength to be tactful. I mean, when someone says or does something and, whether they did it on purpose to get your goat or to, insult or to not just react, whether it's on that call or whether it's in person or whether it's an email or Twitter or Facebook or other social media exchange, to be able to pause, to wait, to be able, that takes strength. So it is the language of strength. Now, if we were going to define tact, we would probably say it's the ability to communicate an idea to someone that they normally not be open to, that they normally would not agree with, that they would not normally be agreeable, but doing so in such a way that not only are they not defensive toward us and resistant to our idea, but they're open to us and open to our idea. Okay. And when we speak tactfully, using the right words and and saying it the right way, that just really opens up doors. Now, empathy is sort of the cousin of tact. The dictionary definition of empathy is the identification with or vicarious experiencing of another person's feelings, which sounds like just a fancy way of saying step into the other person's shoes, which would be so, except when you think about it, that may not be so easy to do because most of us wear different size shoes. We have different size feet. We can't step into their shoes. We don't necessarily understand how they feel. But here's where empathy comes into play. It doesn't have to, communicating empathy doesn't mean you understand how they feel. It means you're able to communicate to them through what you say, how you say it, so using tact, or even just how you show up. It's communicating that you understand they're feeling something and that this something is distressful to them, and you're there to help them work through it. It might be the prospective client you have in your office, and you're going through sort of your general fact-finding conversation with them and so forth, and you're kind of feeling like, you're getting the feeling this person's not really opening up. There's something they're not telling you. There's almost, and here's the thing, Mitch, you go through this conversation with people every day, but it might be the first time this person's ever even thought about engaging a lawyer. Yeah. They're nervous. They're out of their element. They don't want to appear, ignorant, and they don't. And so empathy means you don't necessarily relate to that person. You don't understand but you understand they're feeling something. And so now you might be able to say to this person with an I message, and an I message, not I focus, but an I message, which of course places the onus of any misunderstanding in yourself. It might be saying, Dave or Mary, and it might just be me and how I'm seeing it. I get the feeling that there may be some issues that you feel uncomfortable really bringing up with me. And I just want to let you know that is totally natural. It's totally natural because I do this every day with people. And my clients, they come in, it might be their first or second time, and it makes so much sense. Well, I just want to let you know that that's exactly what I am here for.
That is so, yeah. I mean, and listen, I'm looking at the comments, you guys. I want to get to your questions. AJ, I want to bring your comment up because I do have a suggestion. And Tim, I want to say while I've got you here, I guess we've both been on Tim's show. So it's good to see you, Tim. Thanks for stopping by and participating. Bob, I don't know if you're aware of this, but jury instructions are like the rules of the road for trials. The jurors are read instructions by the judge. And in California, one of our civil jury instructions is the jurors are not to allow sympathy to come into their deliberation process. Okay, but it doesn't say anything about empathy. And so what we do is we talk to our jurors in closing argument that we want them, and we'll blow the instruction up, not to let sympathy come into their deliberation process. However, we're all human beings, and that doesn't mean you have to leave empathy outside the front door to the courtroom. And we focus on this because it's such a powerful emotion or quality or characteristic. And so I'm glad you brought that up. The other thing, you guys, is what Bob said. This may be the client's first time in front of you, sitting in your office. And he or she may be very nervous about, for example, as a lawyer, I might be worried about a piece of evidence that I need to talk to them about. There could be an issue here. And that's what I'm worried about. They're worried about finding the office, walking in, making a good first impression, meeting your staff, coming in, meeting you for the first time, signing the paperwork, coming across the way they want to come across. They've never been in a lawyer's office before. And what you're focused on, because you've done this 1,000 times as a lawyer, is not what they're thinking about. And having empathy for the situation that they're in can take you so far with actually achieving those 4 other principles with that particular client. I think that's just huge. AJ, Bob, just real quick, because Jennifer Quinn says this is good stuff. Thank you, Jenny Q. I know Bob's a fan of Jenny Q. And AJ, call the prosecutor before she makes her offer. That could be interesting. How about AJ on your bigger cases? Always. I'll tell you right now, we have 2 criminal defense attorneys, and AJ is a criminal defense attorney out of Georgia. Here in Orange County, the attorneys that all the judges will hire, best of the best. And what they don't do is they don't participate in the cattle calls in the courtroom and get in line and talk with the DAs on these Mickey Mouse offers. That's not the way they roll. What they do is they'll say, hi, when we're done, can we step out just before lunch? Can I have some one-on-one time with you out in the hallway? Or they'll make that phone call before the hearing. Okay, they do not participate in the cattle call negotiations that we see every single day at the courthouse. I think it would be brilliant, AJ, to call the prosecutor when it's appropriate and talk about the status of your case. Use BombBomb and send a video and talk about it and have a video communication or maybe a Zoom communication. It'll set you apart from everyone else. It'll make you stand out and probably get the resolution that you're looking to get. So I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't mean to kind of like interrupt everything, but it's just something that I've watched some friends of mine do, and they're very, very good at what they do. And that's standard operating procedure, and it gets results, right? It gets results. So we are speaking, let me just come back real quick, you guys, with the amazing Bob Burg, okay, co-author of the Go-Giver series and Adversaries and Allies, along with many other books. I think the Go-Giver sold close to 950,000 copies, which is just unbelievable. That is so cool. Hall of Fame speaker and someone who I consider a friend. And Bob, this has been awesome. Do you have a chance to answer a couple of questions?
Of course, absolutely.
So what I'd like to do is, first of all, for everyone listening to the 5 principles of ultimate or genuine influence, if people want to follow up on these principles, Bob, and dive deep like I did, I recommend Adversaries into Allies, your book. Is that where people should go, or is there another way for them to learn more about these 5 principles?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the book that is the how-to aspect. Now, in the 4th book in the Go-Giver series, the 3rd parable, John David Manns and my book, the Go-Giver Influencer, is sort of the parable based around the principles we're talking tonight. So if they want a fun story that gives them the idea, then that's where they'd want to go. If they want the real how-to, what we're talking about tonight, they can go through they can get the book. Now, in the and they can read a chapter of it first if they'd like. If they go to burg.com and then they go to where it says books and they scroll down to, either one, Bob Burg.
Okay.
That's redirected. So either one's fine, bobburg.com. And it goes to where books and go down to adversaries and to allies. They can read the first chapter and kind of get the idea of what the books. And I also have on my blog, and I do the blog twice a week now. It's a video blog. And right now I'm in the middle of a series called Influence and Success Insights, where we take a lot of the information from this book and I do about a 2 or 3 minute video on it.
Bob Farnham, a friend of mine. I appreciate how much your insights work in other businesses too. Bob's awesome. And we had a chance to Instagram Live with each other. We've known each other online, Bob, for probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years. And we finally met in a live video chat, and it was wonderful. And Bob, I'm looking forward to chatting with you again. Jenny Q read Adversaries into Allies, and she said it's super valuable. So that's fantastic. So one of the questions I'm getting, Bob, is, it's from a friend of mine who's a lawyer, so I get it. So we're dealing with opposing counsel who doesn't care about any of these 5 principles. All he or she cares about is billing the file, just working the clock, dragging the case out as long as he or she can. And we've got to interact with this attorney once or twice a month. We're probably going to try a case against him or her in a year or two. Is there any way to help them come around and see the light? Or what do you do when you're just dealing with somebody that just isn't interested in playing ball when it comes to these 5 principles?
Yeah, in those cases, because some people.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, right. some people can change, and sometimes they don't know that what they're doing is probably destructive to their own practice, I would imagine. And so remember, people do things for their reasons. So you've got to be able to. Now the key is, as you're helping them to kind of see where what they're doing is more counterproductive than productive, you've always got to keep their ego in mind. Because if you say, hey, Jack, you're really messing things up, well, their ego's going to kick and they're not going to. So again, you say something like, I have so much respect for you as a practitioner, and I really appreciate so much you do and the value you bring to your clients. Would it be appropriate for me to share a thought that I've had just from being able to observe you? Okay, now he gives you she gives you their permission to do this. Now you can kind of, but you've got to frame what you're going to say to them so that it's in their best interest to make the change, right? Because if what they're doing they feel is just working for them and they don't want to change and it's not in their best interest in their mind, well, they're not gonna. And then you've got to just be able to work with them as you work with them in a way that you don't compromise your values, of course, but that you do what you need to do in order to get your job done.
What are your thoughts on intentionally steering the conversation a completely different direction on something that has nothing to do with your case? Let's say I enjoy paddleboarding and I happen to have looked at his or her Facebook page and noticed they've shared a couple of paddleboarding pictures. Taking them a different direction, resetting the conversation. It's almost like, I guess, number 4, setting the proper frame, but it's not on your case. It's on maybe a common hobby, interest, or passion that then helps the walls come down, right?
Well, again, remember, it's perfect, because remember, before they buy into your idea, they've got to buy into you.
Ooh.
How do they buy into you?
You said it so much better than I did. That's so powerful.
I didn't say it better than you did. You said it perfectly. But, and it's that relationship, and that, again, the know, like, and trust. Once you've got that, now you're in a position to be able to help move them to a better thought process.
What's interesting is, let me just share, when we're dealing with opposing counsel and it's just not working, it's just not clicking. One technique that works, you guys, is to focus everything you're doing to the person that's making the decisions, the judge. In other words, instead of spending a lot of time writing letters back and forth and yelling at each other over the phone, have them bring that motion, oppose the motion, and let a judge make that decision. Right? Don't play that game, because the longer you play that game, the longer and the more they're going to be able to bill. And so you can kind of remove the issue from that person and put it in front of the decision maker, the judge or the jury. And you're not ever going to be best friends with the other person, but you're going to minimize the time you spend and bill on your file. You're going to maximize the chances of not wasting the judge's time all the time with these little, they don't like dealing with these little issues.
You said you just perfectly, you reset the frame so that this person understands that you're not going to play you're not going to play into their frame. You're not going to buy instead, right. You're going to take it to the third party. You're going to take it to the judge. We're going to depend on the wisdom of the judge to help direct, what so forth. And again, it doesn't mean they have to like it, but when you do it in a way that's tactful, kind, respectful, and you don't get angry, you don't let your emotions carry you. And when they insult you the first couple of times because they're annoyed, you just kind of let it go, and you respond. I appreciate that. Thank you for the thought. And then you go right back to what you're doing. You're retraining that person that if they're going to work with you in a way that's comfortable for them, they're going to have to, again, now go more into your frame. And that's what you want to do.
Years ago, when I was making the transition from being that hardcore in your face, working for an East Coast lawyer here on the West Coast from New Jersey, and it was hardcore, Bob, and I thought that's the way law needed to be. When I gave myself permission to be myself and approach things really the way you're discussing, because that's just me, I had on my, it was when computers first came out, little yellow stickies. And what they reminded me of was to deflect, reflect, and select. Deflect what was just said to you. Reflect upon the different responses as you've just shared with us over the last hour, and then select the appropriate response to help you get the desired result. And in my mind now, it's deflect, reflect, and select that response. And it makes me pause for 5 away. And it's an online course. I think it's coming out next week or the week thereafter. How can people, get on a list or find out when it's coming out? How can they grab it, and how can they connect with you down in Florida? Because I know you have an event coming up in July.
Yeah, we actually have live events based on that program, Endless Referrals, the Go Giver Way. And we're holding our next one in July. Of course, we had to cancel the ones that we've had. And we limit those anyway, the live 2-day workshops, because they're very, very, intensive, and they're very personalized and so forth. But we usually limit it to 30, but because of the social distancing rules, we're limiting it to 20. And so they can, when they're on the site, they can find that.
Okay.
If they'd like to be on the list for the online course, Endless Referrals, the Go Giver Way, which is, I think it's turning out to be like a 9 or 10 hour online course. I mean, it's everything. We're letting it hang out. I mean, it's, they can just, if they go to burg.com or bobburg.com, just to sign up for the on the mailing list, where we send out value-based information anyway. But you will be notified. We'll make sure our entire list is notified when we're ready to launch that.
Well, I'm sure I'll be signing up for the course, Bob, and I am on your list. And I will tell everyone right now, it's been an interesting couple of months, right, with lawyers and the professionals that are watching this, how we're using the cloud. We're using Zoom and other live video services like StreamYard right now to connect with our clients. And it's been a challenge sometimes, Bob, running through these 5 principles when you're dealing with difficult opposing counsel, or a client that's looking for that right lawyer. So you want to connect as quickly as you can, because you may not have a second chance on Zoom to make a good first impression. We're also referring out a lot of cases. And I think, endless referrals, you want to learn how to give referrals and get referrals. You want to be that person who they know, like, and trust, so they make that referral to you. Couple that with these 5 principles of genuine influence. Add Zoom, StreamYard, or other live video platforms. I think you have a recipe for success. Bring Bob into your life. Connect with Bob over on burg.com. Get his courses, get his books. Message me, you guys, with what you liked best about Adversaries into Allies. Okay, Bob, I've probably read the book 3 or 4 times. Listened to it when I'm not running anymore, but listen to it while I'm running. And I got to tell you, I'm such a big fan. I'm humbled that you shared your time with us this evening, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, both when you're teaching your courses and when you're helping all of us from the stage. So for that, and on behalf of all of our viewers this evening, both live and recorded, thank you very much, Bob. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate you more than you can imagine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Take care, be safe, and make each day your masterpiece. Bye-bye, everybody.